So for an upcoming project I need to cut some curved slots and circles, and the best thing for that would be a router circle jig. Now since I don't have one at the time, I'm going to build one today. And therefore I'm going to use some scrap wood and this router with two bases. And for building it I will also need one of the guide bushings that came with it. But after it's finished I won't need them any longer. And also today I'm not alone building it because I have Kriss from Toolify in my shop.
Hello.
Helping me with this. Now before we can get anything done in here, you have to get dressed correctly for this shop. So please.
Okay, give me 1 second. Alright, now I'm ready.
Yeah, that's better. The design I ended up with I saw in another video on YouTube from a commercial product, and it looked so simple that I thought I could build this myself out of wood. So I also leave a link to that video in the video description. The cut list are 3 rectangular pieces and Kriss will do the cutting. This piece now gets glued on here, and to get it centered I made marks that have the same distance from both edges. And the width in here is of course the width of the piece, and that's exactly where I need to glue this. While the glue is drying, I can already mark for the hole for the guide bushing, and this has to be centered from this edge, this edge, this edge, or it has to have the same distance from each edge. The easiest tool to mark this with is a caliper, and I need to set it to exactly half the width, which in my case is 97.5. And I can just mark another one and another one, and making it more visible with the pencil. What I can also already do is mark some of the final shape. Okay, now that the glue is dry, I can drill the hole for the guide bushing. I've already installed it here, and it's a 40mm one, so a 40mm hole. This bushing now fits really snugly in here, and I can rotate it. That's what I wanted. Next I need to cut a big slot on the underside all the way from here to the hole. Okay, so now this is the slot for a slider. It has the right depth already. And next would be to cut a slot that goes all the way through for a tightening bolt. The fence has to be set up very much centered to begin with, so therefore I just use the hole I drilled previously and align the fence. So now it already is roughly centered. Now I can again route from this side, flip around, route from this side, and the slot will be centered and a little bit bigger than 6 millimeters exactly what I need. So after 4 trimming passes, now the slider fits nicely, can slide, and has very little play. And with a little hand plane, I'll also take off the corners so that dust that might be in the slot won't jam the slider. Next, the slider needs a pin that it can rotate on, and I'm just sacrificing a 3mm bit, drill a hole, then stick it in and cut it off. Now I'll just hammer it in with a dab of CA glue. Next, I'm going to embed nuts into the slider every 4 centimeters. That way I can then lock it with a knob to the base. Now notice a little problem because I can't get the full range with the pin. I can get from here to here, and then I have to turn it around, and then it starts here and goes all the way out to here. But there is this section that is missing. I can't reach it. But there is a rather simple fix to that, because I just need to cut off one nut or a little bit of the end, and then I don't have that much reach, but still more than enough, I think. There's still enough space for a 8 to 12mm bit, which is the usual size you would use for cutting out circles, and now I can reach every spot with the pin. Now you could use 2 store-bought knobs. I just made my own, and the way this jig now works is pretty simple. Just find one hole with the embedded nut, and I think it's better to use 2 knobs. Now radius is set, I can loosen the knobs, bring the slider to a different position, lock it down, and have another radius. Now cutting it to the final shape, and of course Kriss will do that because it's the first time that he's using a bandsaw.
Yep, wish me luck.
I want to cut new router bases. They are round, of course, and need to be 160mm in diameter, so 80mm radius, and I measure it here, so that means I also have to subtract half the diameter of the pin, so 78.5, So, like so. And I'm good to go. So all I did now is drilled a 3mm hole for the pin, which I can now align. Then put the router together with the bushing in this hole. Now I could use the jig, leave the router in place and turn everything, but that, as you can see, tangles up the cord. So that's why I used a bushing, because I can also use it like that. After that first test cut, we unfortunately ran out of time and Kriss had to leave again. So I had to finish the project myself. It basically was already finished, but I had another idea that makes it a whole lot easier to use. I made this first test piece into a router base plate blank and additionally installed 3 bearings on the jig. And now instead of using it with a bushing, I can use it directly with the router base plate itself, because the 3 bearings guide it perfectly and there isn't any play because I can adjust the bearings. The adjustment is extremely simple because the screws that I mounted the bearings with are slightly smaller in diameter than the inner diameter of the ball bearings. That allows for a little bit of slack, and when you tighten them down, they stay in place, and that also allows for adjustability. And then I could use the jig to make router base plates for all my routers. One essential thing for this to work though is that the base plate sits perfectly concentric to the router bit. Most manufacturers give you a tool to do that, because you also need that when you use a guide bushing. You can just install this into the collet and the cone will then center the base plate where you can screw it down. And that's basically it. And if you don't have such a jig to set this up, you could also make one yourself, like I did many years ago from cheap materials. This could also be 8mm anything, and wood that you file conical and round. It works the same. The beauty of this jig now is that it's super lightweight, which makes it very easy to locate the center hole on your workpiece with that little pin, and makes it easy to just put it in place. And once it's there, you can just take your router and install it in the jig, which takes 1 second. And now the router can rotate in the jig, so during the cut you can always keep it in the same position relative to you, so the cord won't never tangle up. And you can also, if you use multiple routers, it just needs the same base plate diameter and it just works. And the last beauty is that you don't need to install anything, you don't need to screw anything down, it just works and is super quick to use. And the best tool to mark this is with a compass. No, this doesn't work. Okay. Okay, now that the glue is dry, I need to drill the hole for the 40mm guide bushing. No, let's do that again.